What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the ninth album by rapper Scarface. Basically, this project is called Made, and it came out in the late fall of 2007. The thing about this particular project is just the fact that Scarface had put out a series of albums in the mid 2000s that were kind of pseudo his retirement as far as pitches like that kind of particularly kind of happened. As far as pitches like that particularly kind of happened, Scarface supposedly retired with the 2002 album The Fix, but he did put out like an unofficial album, or an unofficial album got put out in 2003 called My Balls and My Word. As far as that pitch kind of went, I reviewed both those albums. They're on the Scarface Reviews playlist. They're in the Scarface Reviews playlist. Then after that, there were like some 2006 projects. There were some 2006 projects, one of which was another unofficial one called My Homies Part 2, which was a sequel to his 98 album, My Homies. That's a double album. I'm eventually going to get to some of those type ones. But then there was actually an official Scarface project that came out in early 2006 as well called 100. Pretty good concept. Get that. It's a collaboration album with The Product as far as that pitch kind of went. That's basically like a pseudo Scarface album circa the mid late 2000s as far as that pitch kind of goes. I am going to have to get to that one. It's an interesting type pitch, but Made is like the next official project full blown in terms of what happened after the fix from, in terms of like the fix from like the early 2000s, summer 2002. It's a pretty good pitch. This is another classic for Scarface. Really appreciate this album quite a bit. Has a certain kind of like mafioso refinement about it, just with the album title being called Made, being like a made man, and like mafioso as far as the pitching goes. Just an excellent type concept. Some of these type production fares on here are just a little bit more, just have a little bit more groomed and refinement about them. That just has a lot of panache as far as that particular pitch kind of goes. Kind of similar to Jay-Z, what he was up to with American Gangster from 2007. That same sort of pitch. Scarface is going through the same sort of things. That's a pretty dope concept. Just appreciate some of these as Scarface was kind of pushing 40 as this particular album came out. So pretty good concept. This is kind of a commercialized type one. The thing I like about this particular album is just the fact that it's not with like the early 2000s type era. It's circa the late 2000s when production was starting to change a bit, with more southern rap becoming predominant, with folks like Lil Wayne and Birdman, Paul Wall, Lil Flip, some of those type people, Chamillionaire, Bun B, Mike Jones, just folks like that, Young Jock and Rick Ross, as far as some of those type folks kind of go. It's a pretty dope concept, kind of get some of this. This actually has some decent singles on it. It has two modestly commercial singles on here, which is a pretty good pitch just to be able to see that. It's because Scarface in 2002, he at least had a hit single. I forget what the name of. I think it was On My Block, and then there was another one that had Jay-Z on there. Two singles off of the fix did relatively decent, but I kind of feel like they're still relatively in like early 2000s territory as far as being like a good headway to break Scarface even. But I feel like On My Block was just kind of a more gothic and churchy type production on there, just some real Sunday afternoon type music. Just didn't have like the full blown kind of club bounce about that one, but it's definitely a good song. And then Guess Who's Back, that's what I think it's called, Guess Who's Back or Guess Who's Back, pitches like that. I'd say that basically felt like a blueprint left over from Jay-Z's Blueprint days. That's a good concept. But these two particular singles nowadays, Wikipedia continues to slash them this once again, Wikipedia continues to slash them the promotion off this particular product. There were two singles off this particular album, but it only lists one. It just lists that the only single off this album was Girl You Know, featuring Trey Songz, which I didn't really notice Trey Songz on this particular song that much. But the second single, it might have actually been the first single, and Girl You Know is the second single. But the other single off this particular album was Big Dog Status. This had a remix towards it. The remix had like Lil Wayne on there and possibly Juvenile, one of those type folks. Actually, it was T.I., but just the pitch behind it is pretty good concept. So there were two singles off this particular product, and I'm going to talk about it as such. But it's a pretty good bona fide type project you're going to get here. This is a classic album, in my opinion. I definitely like this. Is once again another Scarface album that's going to get a 10 out of 10. Just a 10 short songs on here. No real room for error as far as that pitch kind of happens, but just a good concept. The only real song I don't recommend in some fashion on this particular album is just Go. Just talk about that one real quick. That one's just kind of like a soulful type one, trying to have a little bit of gloss towards it, but it just didn't really pull out the vibe nearly as well as it probably needed to. I kind of feel like songs like Boy Meets Girl and Girl You Know just nailed that particular vibe a little bit better. Go just feels like a Scarface rendition of like 2000s Don Cannon type mixtape type fare. Just doesn't pull out the vibe nearly as well as it needs to. This is soulful type pitch. It's just not quite as wholesome and overall fitting as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. But it is a relatively modest attempt, but it just doesn't nail it nearly as well. But every other song on this particular album is a full blown success. I'd have to say this is real. Like I said, this is very groomed in this overall. This is just a very groomed and overall panache of a project that just has a lot of good appeal about it. Just a graceful type project, very suited up just within the pitch. If you like Jay-Z on like his Kingdom Come and American Gangster type days, folks like that, like Ghostface Kill and like his kind of fish scale type days, a little bit more just Broadway type stuff, just with pitches like that. Just in, I mean, this album is somewhat East Coast, but it's just a Southern rendition of it. I kind of feel like the concept where Scarface had some mafioso type vibes about him, just being a made man of pitches like that, just being a heavyweight in like Houston hip hop and Southern hip hop. But it's just kind of the concept that the refined productions on here work. This is a very excellently produced album, I'd say, minus the song though. But even that one has some relatively kind of vivacious kind of this soul about it. But so I'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. So I'm just going to assume that the first single was Big Dog Status. I'm not for full blown sure, but I think Big Dog Status was like the single that was dropped in like the summer or so of 2007 because he was supposedly putting out buzz singles for this particular product throughout like mid late 2007. So this is a pretty nice one. This is like a Texas Pride kind of rowdy comeback single. I'd have to say in particular, it's like a good jivey swag and modest dance hit. I would definitely have to feel like this song just has a catchy hook. So this is probably one of the more affable Scarface songs in recent times, I'd have to say. It's kind of when you think of like a decent dance bounce by Scarface and pitches like that, there's just not as full-blown many. Like songs like Smile and Hand to the Dead Body, some of those type of pitches that Scarface kind of had on like his 90s and 2000s album didn't really have like a dance bounce. Something like Ringtone and Snap Rap, something like It's Going Down or Shoulder Lane or What You Know, some of those type pitches that more youthful or just younger trap artists and southern rap artists were kind of doing like the mid late 2000s. But this is a good concept of something that Scarface being able to have some good dance job and just be able to nail it particularly well. Pretty excellent concept. So I do like this particular drive of this song. Decent, solid enough dance club song and just overall night outing. Girl You Know is the second single. This is a real nice one. This is probably the commercial hit off this particular album. This is probably the one that you probably saw on BET or VH1, some of those type places. I would say this song's like a snazzy, grown kind of R&B after hours moments of a song, definitely to kind of say it's like some good electro bounce hit that this song particularly kind of has, and this is just like it's like some good electro bounce that this song particularly kind of has, and this is like a hit later Scarface single. So this is another good quality song from Scarface that's in his later on days as far as that pitch kind of goes. Once again, the refinement of this song is particularly pretty hot. Just what I'd say is just too bad that Trey Songz wasn't on this song more full blown. I mean, maybe he was kind of somewhat having to do with the chorus, but it just kind of felt like more of just like something that some sort of R&B singer like Jay Holiday, Trey Songz, some of those type of folks would have done late 2007, early 2008. Not necessarily T-Pain or Usher, but just the concept of just a more refined type one. Jay Holiday, Ryan Leslie, some of those type folks that just has that graceful, almost John Legend, but just a little bit more thuggish and rugged. I'd have to say just a good concept for that. Definitely reminds me of some of the stuff that Trey Songz was kind of doing with Passion, Pain, and Pleasure from 2010. Good concept for that, but it's definitely pretty nice. And this just has a lot of graceful type of feel. This is like a good date night type single to kind of get in particular, just the good concept of just evening type fare and just the kind of like just a more graceful type outing of just not necessarily being this one's just not as much full-blown tall T type music, I'd say, but still pretty good concept. So I'm just going to recommend the rest of the songs on here. Like I said, the only song I don't recommend in some fashion is just Go, but one of the best hooks on this particular album would be Boy Meets Girl. This is definitely a pretty suave type one. It's like a woozy kind of struggle song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a great affable tone to kind of get off this particular song. This has an excellent chorus, like I was saying. This is just a superb late day after hours. This is like a superb late day after hours malaise, I'd have to say about this particular one. Good drudgy type stuff. I like the fact that Scarface included some drudgy type songs on here, just the after hours type pitch, again, some of that type fare. I'd probably say that another one that's like that is Who Do You Believe In, I would have to say in particular. I mean, because this is such a short album, you don't get a lot of moments that are clones of like particular other ones, I'd have to say, but there are some ones that are like Girl You Know. I'd say another sophisticated one like Girl You Know would be basically Get Out My Face and Never. Those are some nice ones to kind of have within that relative pitch. But a real nice smoking song on here would be Dollars. It's a pretty nice one. It's like a warped and kind of kooky dance jam, I'd have to say in particular. It's a great cut to smoke a few to. I would definitely have to say zone out and just hang out after hours in like a pretty good club hitter, I'd have to say. It's definitely pretty good hangout song with your pals, pitches like that. Even a hot box type song, just pitches like that. Just being able to really get some smoke sessions going, PlayStation type music, simple type of feel, watching basketball just in the winter, some of those type pitches as far as that particular kind of happens. Real good appeal behind it. Get Out My Face is a nice one as well. This is a real mafioso type one. It's like a mafioso kind of grandiose turn up of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a solid kind of refined commotion, I would definitely have to say, for homies to meet up, definitely within that aspect. And this is just some late hours kind of fun. This one's kind of a good concept, just kind of a mixture between like Girl You Know and Big Dog Status, I'd have to say in particular. It's got some of that refinement of Girl You Know, but it's got some of that relative hangout, just kind of rowdiness of Big Dog Status, just kind of the appeal behind it. It's one of those type pitches that fits the theme and the overall title of this particular album being called Made as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Just really graceful kind of violins and orchestral type stuff on this particular song. A surprising hit song on here that I like more in recent times would be Who Do You Believe In? Now, I want to say I listened to this song in the past, but I do like this song. I almost didn't recommend this song, but this is the song that solidified me giving this album like a 10 out of 10. Is like a brooding kind of day after hours gloom of a song I'd have to say in particular. It's like a great late smoke sesh, I would have to say, and this is just some good grab Taco Bell and mellow out type tune to kind of get. So it's definitely good for some demon time. If you just woke up at 6:37 p.m. pitches like that and you're getting ready to start with your evening as far as that pitch goes, even if it's just paying bills and getting on with night activity, if you're more of a night owl. If you're more of a night owl and have like a night job, so it's kind of a good concept to get started with things. Really appreciate the gloom behind it. It could also be like a relative wind down, just kind of the concept of just cooling off, pitches like that, just smoking a few, getting some tacos, pitches like that, just some good concept just to kind of unwind a bit and just have like a cold beer, some of those type of things to really get some good feelings in your system, I'd have to say. Real nice brooding type one. Suicide Note's another nice one. This is another one that's kind of like Get Out My Face and Girl You Know, I'd have to say. There's like a malaise kind of ruminating cut, I would have to say in particular. It's like a vintage kind of haunting Scarface in like a 2000 sense, I'd have to say. And it's like a smoke one and kind of local traverse type song to get. I would say Scarface keeps the haunting songs in this particular album to a minimum. I just would have to say a little bit of that and like Boy Meets Girl. The storytelling in Boy Meets Girls kind of has some of that doom about it. I would say Burn is a particular shrouded type one to kind of get, but for the most part, I would say Burn and probably Suicide Note are the two darkest type songs in this particular album. This is like a real graceful type one. It's another made man type music, mafioso type flair within that relative pitch, a little bit more sophistication, but it works pretty well. Just kind of haunting, but also mafioso just within that sense. So it's a good concept kind of get this circa like the late 2000s when productions was more refined. But this would definitely be some local traverse, just residential type fare, just walking to gas stations, pitches like that, whether or not you're just cruising in a whip or just walking around locally, pitches like that, just being able to get some swishers, some of those type fares, paying cell phone bills, some of those type things. Burn is a pretty nice one. Do appreciate this one. This is another one that has one of the best hooks on this particular album, I'd have to say. It's like a dark and brooding kind of evening haze of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a great smoke a few gem, I would definitely have to say. Definitely get some smokage in your system, I would definitely suppose. This has a magnificent chorus, like I was saying. This is just this song just has some good commercial snaps. This is Scarface the way he needs to be in these recent times, or at least relatively recent, up to 17 years, at least recent to like the late 2000s. I'd say this is commercial just within the appeal behind it. Scarface telling stories like he does, his pitches like that, but also on some haunting type appeal. An excellent chorus from Zero and pitches like that. Commercial type snap with songs like Girl You Know and Big Dog Status with just the overall beat production that just has a very alarming and just kind of like bravado induced. It's just a very darkly triumphant type production on here, kind of brassy, but I do like the concept behind it. It's a real nice one. Definitely some good pitches. And then I would say Never's another nice one. It's like a glossy kind of suave refinement of a song I'd have to say in particular. This is similar to Girl You Know, I would definitely have to say, and this is a good song to play in the same night as that particular song I'd have to say, and this is a pretty blue blood type song. Never reminds me of something that Jeezy would have done in like the 2000s type fare, just with his mixtape typeness, with like a kind of with like his mixtape typeness, with like a soulful Don Cannon type beat as far as that particular production fare kind of goes along with it. Just some good stuff to kind of get there. Do appreciate that one. Scarface does pretty good on that one. He does better on Never than he does with Go. I'd have to say they're both relatively similar, but Never just is leagues. I'd say that Never is probably 1 or 2 leagues better than the attempt that it was on Go, I'd have to say. That's a particular concept. So yeah, basically out of 10 songs in this particular album, like I said, I recommend 9. So this album's going to get a 10 out of 10. Just to kind of say, as far as that pitch kind of has with it. Another classic album for Scarface, as far as that kind of goes. At this particular stage, he's just getting these hits after hits. It just makes me question some albums I haven't listened to full blown by Scarface, like Mr. Scarface is Back and The World Is Yours from 91 and 93. I question if those are going to be classics. We'll have to see about some of those, just because it'd be neat to have a bunch of these just be real megaton type, mammoth type albums as far as that pitch kind of goes. Then it'll also be interesting to see how Last of a Dying Breed from the year 2000 kind of does. But we'll get to some more of these just within that relative pitch to see how many more classics that Scarface can kind of crank out here, because there's just been one after the other in terms of these ones I've reviewed in these past several months. Definitely a good concept, but social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'm going to give this social score like a 9.5 out of 10, because I feel like it's quality on here. Definitely some blistering type appeal. It's definitely a haunting album. It's very graceful just within the pitch. Definitely has some of that appeal. 2 hit singles just within the aspect, but I kind of feel like this album is just a little bit tougher to know about as far as that pitch can happen. So I feel like some folks probably didn't even realize it came out in certain senses. It just was kind of came and went as far as that particular pitch kind of went. Came out just between the promotion cycle. This product was probably between about July of 2007 to about December so 2007. I want to say within the opening months of 2008, the promotion of it was pretty much wrapped up. I mean, it just didn't last very long in terms of like the after effects of the album. Came out in December 2007, so the promotion fair of it just was kind of vanished in like early winter 2008. But it is a pretty good pitch. This is very inspired Scarface on here. Like I said, some Day Dredge type songs kind of get for some of that. Some smoking songs like Dollar and Who Do You Believe In, some of those Dredge type songs. Some story songs like Burn and Boy Meets Girl that are just dark and haunting within that relative sense, or at least kind of shrill and just ghastly as far as the pitch can go. Some good singles and Big Dog Status and Girl You Know, I'd have to say. Some kind of mafioso kind of refinement just within that relative grace of sophistication. Songs like Girl You Know, Never, Suicide Note, some of those that pitches Get Out My Face. Good pitches like that. Has pretty good social taste. Just for the most part, it just feels somewhat not necessarily full blown underhanded, but just underhanded in terms of like the casual type of appeal of how many folks would say, "Oh yeah, I remember this particular album is full blown." This is kind of one that hit, but it's just kind of feels somewhat more fleeting, I'd have to say. In terms of the future, like Scarface retired back in 2015/2017. He has a number of projects still to put. He still has a number of projects left to get to. I'm definitely going to have some fun with some of these type ones. I question how many more of them are going to be full blown classics as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. But a lot of these definitely are. I'd have to say 10 after this album after album gets a 10 and pitches like that. I'd have to say we'll have to see about some more. Scarface has dropped a couple of mixtapes. Apparently, he dropped at least two. I knew that there was one called Dope Man Music from 2010, but apparently there was a mixtape in 2011 as well. So we'll have to get to some of those. Definitely albums like Last of a Dying Breed and his early 90s albums as far as that pitch goes. But this is a classic album here. Relatively overlooked just with the nowadays times, I'd have to say, but it does have some gems on here. Definitely, it's a compact album, but it gets to the point and blisteringly has that appeal, and you definitely should fuck with it just to see these gems just widespread with that mafioso type refinement.